Sidney Crosby, Claude Giroux, their teams don't get along, so they didn't get along, and sometimes that's all it takes. Let's start with someone that everybody knows, Sidney Crosby. That's not a dig at Giroux, it's just that even people who don't follow hockey know Crosby. That's in part because he's very, very good, but it's also because the NHL, arguably not great at marketing players, decided to shine the spotlight on Crosby from day one. Before he was even drafted in 2005, he was anointed the next one by Wayne Gretzky. His skills had been noteworthy since he was 7. He was so good that growing up, opposing parents threatened him from the stands as their kids tried the same on the ice. He was just great. And when the Penguins drafted him first overall, they, along with the league, didn't waste the opportunity in immediately making him a household name. That also meant that he'd immediately have a target on his back anytime Pittsburgh shared the ice with Philadelphia. And Crosby's first visit to Philly made it clear what his future had in store. That came in 2005, and Derian Hatcher played the part of welcoming committee. Hatcher found Crosby often, and caught him above the shoulders multiple times, eventually leaving the rookie on the ice looking for a few teeth. No penalty was called, and Crosby was mad enough that he ripped off the microphone he had been wearing for the broadcast and went after Hatcher. Naturally, the Philadelphia crowd loved this. What they didn't love quite as much was Crosby going on to score the game winner in overtime. Between being very good and showing his emotions, Crosby had quickly become a vessel that Philly could funnel their hate into. See, the Flyers and Penguins, they've been linked since day one. They entered the league together in the 1967 expansion. They faced off in each team's first ever exhibition game. When Philly opened the Spectrum, the Penguins were there. But as both teams got settled into the league, the Flyers pulled away pretty quickly. In 1974, they became the first of the next 6 teams to win the Stanley Cup, and did it again a year later. Meanwhile in Pittsburgh, in between those cups, the Penguins had to file for bankruptcy as hockey's future in the Steel City looked uncertain. Spoiler, things worked out. It was just a tale of 2 starts. And when it came to the Battle of Pennsylvania, the Flyers owned it early, including a nearly 15-year stretch where the Penguins were winless in Philly. Once that streak was snapped, a lot went down. They met in the postseason for the first time in 1989 and enjoyed it so much they dragged Game 5 out, filling the final 30 seconds with brawls that only delayed the Penguins' 10-7 victory. But that first postseason meeting would eventually be won by the Flyers. A few years later, Mario Lemieux swung things the Penguins' way and brought Pittsburgh their first 2 cups in 91 and 92. Eric Lindros showed up in Philly to balance things out for a bit and help lead them to postseason wins over the Pens in 97 and 2000. The second of those included a game that set the record for longest game played in the modern era because, of course, these guys just can't get enough of each other. And all along the way, they fought and fought. And when realignment threatened to split them up, they even fought together to make sure they would be able to keep fighting in the same division. So, given the history, it's been hard for even generational talents to avoid getting caught up in the rivalry. And although getting under Crosby's skin became more of a consolation prize considering the success he and the Penguins found, a few years after the kid came along, it looked like Philly had found a prize of their own. Claude Giroux's road to the NHL was far less paved than Crosby's. He had been avoided in junior league drafts, had to walk on just to play junior hockey in Ottawa. But as Giroux put the work in, he began to transform as a player. He made the CHL All-Rookie team and went from unwanted to the 22nd overall pick in the 2006 NHL Draft. By the 08-09 season, he was getting meaningful playing time and impressed enough to be a full-time player a year later. And that year, he scored the Flyers' most important goal of the season, beating Henrik Lundqvist for the deciding shootout score on the final day of the regular season, which sent the Flyers to the postseason. He kept it up from there and helped Philly make it to the Stanley Cup final, where they fell short against Chicago. His level of play even made it possible for the Flyers to trade Jeff Carter and Mike Richards, which helped signal Giroux as the future of this team. As Claude approached superstar status, Crosby faced some tough years. The Pens captain had to miss extended time with long-lasting concussion symptoms, including the bulk of the 2011-2012 season. With a little more of the Pennsylvania spotlight shining on Giroux, he had his best season yet. He led the league in point scoring for most of the season and was a favorite for the Hart Trophy. Alongside new line mates Scott Hartnell and Jaromir Jagr, Giroux had the Flyers set up for another postseason run, and conveniently enough, Crosby was cleared to play the final 22 games as the Penguins jockeyed with the Flyers in the standings. So on April 1st, 2012, when these teams met with just 4 games remaining in the regular season, there was a lot to play for. Potentially home ice advantage in a first-round series between these two teams. They matched each other through the first 2 periods, but the Flyers opened it up in the third, and Giroux made it 5-2 with under 7 to play. After the Pens closed the gap, Philadelphia scored an empty netter to seal the win, and a moment later, shit popped off. Joe Vitale caught Daniel Briere on open ice, and the teams met at the center logo. As those on the ice paired up, the main show came from the bench. Pittsburgh assistant coach Tony Granato and Phillies head coach Peter Laviolette got in a shouting match as Pierre Maguire narrated from below. As Simmons and Egeland stepped up, Giroux inched his way towards the fray. Whether he was blocking his coach from climbing into the Penguins' bench or egging on anyone he could, he at least looked to be enjoying himself. 40 penalty minutes later, the heat had been cranked up just a bit. So that happened. Then, a few days later, the postseason was set, and they'd be playing each other again. It's a beef. Crosby was quick to admit what this series could bring, but was a bit more diplomatic than some of the Flyers, specifically Hartnell, who would actually make a really good promoter. Game 1 proved Crosby right. Pittsburgh gained a 3-0 advantage in the first, but the visiting Flyers climbed out of the hole to force overtime, where Voracek found the back of the net in less than 3 minutes. For Pittsburgh, it marked the third multi-goal lead they'd blown in the last 4 games against Philly. They'd do it again in Game 2, as the Flyers managed to net 8 goals on the night, a ludicrous number that they'd actually match in Game 3. And that third game also saw the teams erupt in the ways of old. And by old, I mean like 2 weeks ago. In the first period, the big spark came when the teams met behind Philadelphia's net. A scrum followed and players tried to pair up, including Crosby and Giroux along the glass, who used the chance to have a chat. Crosby followed Giroux and they continued their talk, but things started to die down. That's when Voracek went to get his glove, Crosby played keep away, and the teams got back into it, which gave Giroux a chance to return to Sid. The refs did all they could to keep them from landing anything serious and took the pair quickly to the ice. If nothing else, they served as a distraction for Letang to take his turn with Timonen. G and the kid were sent to the box where they continued their conversation, and it became clear Crosby had a lot on his mind. The team settled down a little in the second, but in the third, after Giroux made it 7-4 Flyers, they got back to shenanigans. It started when Neal left his skates to hit Couturier high. The teams came together as he lay on the ice, but once play resumed with Neal still out there, it got a bit out of hand. He again went high, this time on Giroux, who had trouble finding his balance. And seconds later, a slow change gave an excuse to mix it up in front of the benches. Everybody paired up, including Crosby and Schenn, and as the referees attempted to sort this one out and get the boys back in the boxes, more scrums broke out. Just like in 1989, these teams never wanted the fun to end. After 60 minutes were finally finished, the two sides had combined for 132 minutes in penalties and minimal goaltending. The Flyers came away with an 8-4 win and went up 3-0 on the series. Afterward, Crosby spat his now famous feelings about Philadelphia.
I don't like him. Why don't you like him? Because I don't like him. Did he do something I mean?
Giroux seemed to take pride in the rival's words or the fact he had gotten a reaction from Crosby that no other Flyer had. This was the first time the Penguins captain had fought anyone from Philadelphia, and just the 6th time in his pro career that he'd gotten into a proper fight. Shout out to hockeyfights.com, a site that everyone should go to and just waste time on because it's the greatest database ever made. And if you disagree, then fight me. Maybe they'll make a post out of it. Pittsburgh responded by absolutely pouring it on in Game 4, then won a much closer Game 5. By Game 6, though, Giroux looked to end it early. 5 seconds in, he met Crosby with a massive open ice hit at the blue line. Then, less than half a minute later, intercepted a Penguins attempt to clear and put a shot stick side past Fleury to make it 1-0 just 32 seconds into the game. They took the series with a 5-1 win. shook hands, and had to wait to heat the beef back up. But that didn't take too long. After the Flyers were bounced in the next round, Giroux needed to have surgery on both wrists. The cause? Well, according to Claude, Crosby gave him enough whacks on face-offs that he was left with a fracture plus torn cartilage. When Sid was notified about this, he denied the attempt but made it clear if he caught a wrist, he couldn't care less. If anything, he found it funny. He felt like that was something the Flyers did, so any complaints fell on deaf ears. Although Giroux didn't get an apology, he was on the receiving end of a few better things. First, he was voted by fans onto the cover of EA Sports NHL 13, further proof of his elevated status in the sport. Then, the Flyers cemented his importance by naming him captain. The January announcement came just before the season began, a belated start thanks to an owners-initiated lockout, which did do one good thing. It allowed our Pennsylvania boys to open the season against each other. But despite Giroux netting one in his debut as captain and the Philly crowd welcoming Crosby in the only way they know, the Penguins took the game, which set the tone for that shortened season. Pittsburgh finished with the best record in the East, and Philadelphia missed the playoffs as they fell under 500. It was an uneventful stretch after how the previous season ended, and while the team rivalry remained with consistently tough battles during the regular season, the captains managed to stay out of the headlines for anything other than their play. That doesn't completely add up, though. Becoming captain wouldn't have changed Giroux's feelings, and Crosby had never let success get in the way of a grudge, so how did this go from petty and hard-hitting to kinda nothing in a year? Well, Giroux's own coach may have had a hand in that, albeit a well-meaning one. After the Game 6 clincher, Peter Laviolette showered Giroux in praise, calling him the best player in the world. Regardless of intent, what those words wound up doing was they cranked up the spotlight. If your coach launches you into the same conversation as Crosby or Ovechkin, the bar gets raised, either in what everyone expects from you or what you expect from yourself. And just a year after being anointed, a year where the Flyers and their captain struggled, Giroux admitted that he hadn't quite been feeling it and needed to find his confidence. It would make sense then that the beef, for him at least, would take a back seat. But then things kinda got weird. So these teams were in slightly different places. The Flyers made the postseason just twice in the 5 years after the 2012 Slugfest, while the Penguins won back-to-back cups in 2016 and 17. But in the midst of all that came a new layer to this. For the 2015 IIHF World Championship, Crosby and Giroux found themselves on the same team. Giroux had recently called their relationship interesting while discussing the rivalry. But their allegiance to Team Canada was strong enough for the captains to look past whatever history they had. That wouldn't prevent it from feeling extremely wrong when Giroux found Crosby in close who buried the puck, and then the pair actually celebrated together. But, I mean, even they'd probably admit neither looks over the moon here. When talking about it though, they said eventually things didn't feel too bizarre. Once they put on the same jersey, everyone had the same goal, and it worked just fine, as Crosby pointed out, who also was tasked with playing the captain on a ship rostering multiple Flyers. But he did it well. Team Canada dominated the tournament, and the beefmates turned teammates took home the gold. A year later, they'd do it again at the World Cup of Hockey, and it came even easier. Giroux said they hadn't really known each other off the ice before the World Championship. And as we know, they didn't like each other. But now, he had an easy time admitting Crosby was a great guy off the ice. As for Sid, he even went as far as saying it was fun to play together. It probably helped that they went undefeated in both tournaments, but I digress. While the individual beef seemed to spoil, thankfully nothing could let the Battle of Pennsylvania go bad. And when they met in the 2018 playoffs, the captains again jostled. Crosby even called out Giroux for a questionable hit, but after the Penguins took the series in 5 games, it was clear things between the individual pair had peaked long ago. These players have brought the best out of each other, whether playing for opposing teams or on the same side. While they've both found individual success, only one has gotten his name on the cup, doing so enough times that it helped the feud fade. But regardless of who's good, bad, winning, losing, there will always be enough fuel for the team's rivalry. And for as long as they've got the C stitched on their jersey, there will always be a little extra spotlight shining on Crosby and Giroux. Hey, thanks for watching. Got a few links for you in the comments if you want to check those out, and here's some more hockey beef that I'm sure you'll enjoy. I would also love it if you could subscribe to SB Nation and hit the bell for notifications so we can get views and make our parents proud.